My ex used me for years while finding herself, so I built the life she wanted. And now she's begging for the version of me she lost. I'm a 29-year-old guy. And for 5 years, I was nothing more than a stepping stone for the woman I loved. Her name was Lena. From the moment I met her in college, she felt like sunlight in human form, wild, unpredictable, and full of dreams that didn't have names yet. I was the opposite, grounded, practical, the kind of guy who believed that love meant showing up every single day, not just when it was easy. We met in an art elective I took just to fill credits. She sat next to me, sketching while humming under her breath, her notebook filled with unfinished ideas. "You look like the type who actually reads the syllabus," she teased the first time we talked. I laughed because she was frightened. That's how it started. I was drawn to her chaos, and she said my stability made her feel safe. When we graduated, Lena wanted to find herself, so she took odd jobs that never lasted more than a few weeks. I had already landed a steady office job and started paying for most of our shared expenses: rent, food, even her paints and supplies. She told me she couldn't create under pressure, and I believed her. I told myself I was investing in her future. In our future, I remember her late-night rambles about wanting to open her own art studio someday. I'd listen while making her tea, feeling proud to be part of her journey. "You're the only one who believes in me," she'd whisper against my chest. And those words made every sacrifice feel worth it. But over time, I started noticing a pattern. Lena's dreams kept shifting, but her effort never did. I convinced myself it was just a phase. I didn't realize it then, but I wasn't her partner. I was her safety net, and I had no idea how much that would cost me. At first I told myself relationships go through phases, that every couple has imbalances. But with Lena, the imbalance wasn't a phase, it was a pattern. I worked 10-hour days at a marketing firm while she called her lack of income creative freedom. When bills piled up, she'd sigh dramatically and say, "You're so good with numbers, babe." I'd just mess everything up anyway. I'd smile, thinking I was helping her focus on her art. She had a way of making irresponsibilities sound poetic. Every month she'd talk about new dreams, a clothing line, a YouTube art vlog, mural project hand. I'd get excited for her, only for those ideas to fade within days. When I gently asked if she'd thought about steady work, she'd frown. "You don't get it, do you? Not everyone wants to live trapped in a cubicle." That line hit like a slap. Even though she said it softly, I started noticing how she always seemed to need space right after I paid the bills. A few days at her friend's place, or a spontaneous solo weekend to recharge. Each time she returned, she'd be all smiles, kissing me like nothing happened. And each time I let it slide because love meant patience, right? There were moments of genuine connection, late-night talks. Shared laughter, her head resting on my shoulder while we watched old movies. Those moments tricked me into believing we were still okay. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I felt like I was giving and giving, while she only took what kept her comfortable. One night, while reviewing my bank statements, I realized I'd covered nearly everything for the past 6 months. When I mentioned it, she laughed, saying, "Relax. Money isn't everything." But for MIT, it was starting to feel like I was funding someone else's freedom while drowning in my own responsibility. And that realization, it was only the beginning of what I'd soon uncover. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from giving everything to someone who doesn't even notice. That's what life with Lena became me, quietly crumbling under the weight of her comfort. I'd wake up before sunrise, get ready for work, glance at her still sleeping, surrounded by half-finished sketches and empty wine glasses. She'd stir when I kissed her forehead goodbye, mumbling, "You're the best, babe," before rolling over. I used to smile at that. Eventually, it just felt empty. My paychecks vanished faster than I could save them. Groceries, rent, her art supplies, impulsive inspiration trips. When I'd mention tightening the budget, she'd pout and say, "You're suffocating me." Once, after I told her I couldn't afford another spontaneous road trip, she snapped, "I thought you believed in me." That line haunted me. I did believe in her more than she ever believed in herself. Even emotionally, I became her therapist. Whenever she had a bad day, I'd cancel my own plans to comfort her. But when I was stressed from work, she'd roll her eyes and say, You're being dramatic. My needs didn't fit her narrative of freedom and artistry. She wanted a fan club, not a partner. The worst part, I started apologizing for her behavior. When friends hinted that Lena was taking advantage of me, I'd defend her. She's just figuring things out, I'd say, trying to convince myself as much as them. But deep down, I knew I was losing myself piece by piece. One night, I came home late to find a note on the counter, gone to clear my mind. Don't wait up. Love you. No explanation. No timeline. Just that, I sat at the table staring at her handwriting, realizing how easy it was for her to disappear, how easy it was for her too. Leave me holding everything together while she chased another fleeting version of freedom. And something in me started to break after that night. I tried to convince myself that Lena just needed space. She came back 3 days later, smelling like someone else's cologne, but I didn't say a word. I just hugged her, too scared to push her away. She smiled like nothing happened, humming softly as she unpacked her bag. "You worry too much," she said, brushing past me. That phrase would become her favorite defense whenever she crossed a line. Slowly, the cracks widened. Lena started posting cryptic quotes online, stuff like "some people love cages disguised as homes" and "you can't grow beside someone who clips your wings," mutual friends noticed, messaging me with awkward sympathy. One even asked, "Are you guys okay? She's been posting weird stuff." I laughed it off, saying she was just expressing her art. But inside, I felt sick. I was no longer her partner, I was her metaphor. Then came the jokes. At parties, she'd roll her eyes when I talked about my job, saying, "Oh, don't mind him, he's our responsible dad of the group." Everyone would laugh. I'd smile through it, but each jab cut deeper. I started talking less, doing less, just to avoid being mocked. Once when I told her it hurt, she sighed dramatically and said, "God, you're so sensitive. I can't be myself around you anymore." Our home, once filled with laughter, became silent. I'd come home to her scrolling endlessly, glass of wine in hand, earbuds in. The distance wasn't physical anymore. It was emotional. She'd glance at me like I was background noise. One evening, I overheard her on the phone whispering to a friend, "He's a good guy, just not exciting." That line hit harder than any insult. I was the man holding her world together, and somehow that made me boring. And yet, despite all of it, I couldn't let her go. Not yet. It was early spring when Lena dropped the bombshell. We were eating dinner takeout because she'd had a long day of thinking. She set down her fork and said, almost casually, "I've decided to take a trip. Alone. Just a month. I need to clear my head and figure out who I am." First, I just stared. "A trip? Where?" She smiled softly like she was announcing something brave. "Portland. Maybe Seattle. I'll stay with friends. Maybe paint, maybe write. I just need to breathe." The silence between us stretched. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. "Okay. Do you want help booking flights?" She nodded, grateful like I was supporting her personal evolution. I paid for the tickets, of course. She kissed my cheek before bed, whispering, "You're my rock. Don't ever change." For the first week she was gone, I tried to stay positive. I sent good morning texts, told her I missed her. Sometimes she replied with a heart emoji, sometimes nothing. By the second week, her social media started filling with photos, rooftop bars, music festivals, sunsets with captions like "New beginnings require old endings." My stomach dropped when I saw one photo, Lena, hand on a guy's shoulder, laughing like she'd never laughed with me. I confronted her over the phone. "Who is he?" Her voice turned cold. "Just a friend." "Don't be paranoid. This is why I needed space." Space. "Lena, you're acting like we're strangers," she sighed. "I never promised forever, okay? You're taking this too seriously." That sentence, it didn't just break me, it hollowed me out. All the years, the sacrifices, the love, I realized they meant nothing to her. She hung up before I could respond that night. I sat in our apartment, surrounded by her unfinished art, staring at the empty space she'd left behind. For the first time, I stopped believing she'd ever come back the same. and I had no idea that this was only the start of my unraveling. 2 weeks after that call, I got the text that finally ended us. No phone conversation, no closure, just a few sentences that began with, "You've been amazing, but I need to focus on myself." The words blurred on my screen as I read them over and over, trying to convince myself there had to be more, that she'd call and say it was a mistake. But she didn't. She vanished. The apartment felt like a tomb. Her clothes were gone, her toothbrush missing, her favorite mug replaced with a hollow space on the counter. The silence was unbearable. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. expecting to feel her beside me, but there was just cold air and the hum of the fridge. I started keeping the TV on just to drown out the emptiness. Friends tried to comfort me. "Man, she did you dirty," one said. Another joked, "You dodged a bullet." But it didn't feel like that. I didn't feel free, I felt discarded, like my loyalty had expired. Every time I opened social media, there she was, smiling, glowing, holding wine glasses under string lights with captions like "learning to love myself again." I wanted to scream. One night, I gathered everything that reminded me of her photos, notes, little sketches she'd taped to the wall and stuffed them into a box. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, so I shoved it into the closet. But it didn't stop the ache. I kept wondering if she ever thought about me, if she missed the version of herself I helped hold together. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping. The guy who once had everything under control couldn't even get out of bed some mornings. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was humiliated, forgotten, erased from the life I helped her build. And yet, even at my lowest, some part of me still hoped she'd call, because I hadn't learned yet that sometimes the silence is your answer. I hit a point where the pain stopped feeling sharp. It just became heavy, like a constant weight pressing against my chest. Weeks blurred into months. I went to work, came home, slept, repeated. My friends eventually stopped checking in. I couldn't blame them. Who wants to hang around someone who talks about the same heartbreak every day? Then one morning, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I looked. Hollow, pale skin, unshaven face, sunken eyes. I didn't recognize the man staring back. Lena had once called me her rock, but now I was just rubble. Something in me cracked that morning, not from sadness, but from exhaustion. I was done being the victim in a story I didn't even write. I started small. I cleaned the apartment, threw out the takeout boxes, and finally donated her clothes that she'd forgotten. Took the box of memories from the closet and burned it in a metal bin on the balcony. Watching those papers curl and blacken felt like exhaling after months of suffocating. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let her be the last chapter of who I was. I deleted her number, unfollowed her on everything, and set a single goal: rebuild, one day at a time. I started running after work, cooking again, reading books I'd abandoned years ago. For the first time in forever, I felt silence that didn't hurt, it healed. Pain, I realized, doesn't disappear, it transforms. And if you let it, it builds something stronger in its place. Lena once said, I was too predictable. Maybe she was right. But predictability can turn into discipline, and that's what she underestimated, because while she was out finding herself, I was quietly rebuilding the man she thought she outgrew. And soon, she'd see exactly what she lost. A year past 12 months that felt like an entirely different lifetime. Somewhere between the miles I ran and the nights I spent rebuilding myself, the pain turned into fuel. My career took off. I got promoted to team lead, bought a better apartment, and started dressing like someone who actually respected himself. I didn't realize how much of my identity had been buried under the effort of holding someone else together. People started noticing. Man, you've changed, one coworker said during a meeting. I had, but not in the way Lena once accused me of changing. I was finally becoming the version of myself I used to hide, the one that didn't apologize for existing. I started saying yes to things again. Hiking trips, dinners, hobbies. I learned to enjoy my own company without needing anyone to validate me. Every now and then, I'd drive past the coffee shop where Lena and I used to go. Instead of feeling that familiar sting, I'd just smile. I was no longer haunted, I was free. Then one night, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post of hers. Same poetic tone, same captions about growth and energy. Only this time she looked tired, older somehow. The guy from her pictures was gone. Her art page had been inactive for months. For a brief moment, I felt pity, then gratitude. Because the man I was a year ago would have reached out, tried to comfort her, tried to fix her again, but not anymore. I closed the app, leaned back, and let myself feel proud. I'd done something she never could. I'd faced my own reflection and built something real. I didn't know it yet. But life was about to hand me a full circle moment. One that would make every ounce of pain worth it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The kind of day that feels like background noise in your life. I was grabbing coffee at a place near my office when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Soft, careful, almost rehearsed.
Daniel.
I turned, and there she was, Lena. Same piercing eyes, same effortless charm, but there was something different now. She looked ... dimmed. The confidence that once filled every inch of her had faded into something uncertain. She smiled awkwardly. Wow, it's really you. My first instinct was anger, but it fizzled almost immediately. All I felt was distance. Hey, Lena, I said evenly. Been a while. She laughed nervously, tucking her hair behind her ear. Yeah. I saw your posts. You've been doing great. I just nodded. She hesitated before asking, do you have time to talk? Maybe catch up? Part of me wanted to walk away. Another part, the calmer, healed version, was curious. So I agreed. We sat across from each other, and for the first time, I saw her without the lens of love or nostalgia. She told me things hadn't gone the way she expected. The freedom she'd chased turned out to be lonelier than she imagined. The guy she'd left with. He'd cheated on her and disappeared. She was back in the city, staying with a friend, trying to get back on track. Her voice cracked when she said, "You were always the only one who really believed in me." I didn't respond right away. The old me would have reached across the table, offered to help, maybe even forgive. But now, I just sipped my coffee and listened, because for the first time, her chaos didn't pull me in, it reminded me how far I'd come. And as she leaned forward with that familiar look in her eyes, I realized exactly where this was heading. Lena leaned closer, her voice softer now. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she said, tracing the rim of her cup. "About us. About how I treated you." Her eyes searched mine, and for a moment it felt like we were back in that small apartment, our words trying to fill the silence she created. "You were good for me, Daniel. You always were." I just wasn't ready back then. Stayed quiet, letting her speak. She took that as permission to continue. "I've changed. I know what I want now, and I guess I just wanted to see if maybe we could start fresh." Her voice trembled at the end, the mask of confidence slipping. Once those words would have shattered me, given me hope, dragged me back into the same cycle. But this time, all I felt was clarity. I looked at her and said calmly, "You didn't lose me because you weren't ready. You lost me because you never saw me." Her smile faltered. "That's not fair." I was confused. "No," I said. "You were selfish. You called it finding yourself, but all you did was take until there was nothing left." Her eyes welled up and she reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "You used to tell me I was predictable," I added quietly. "Turns out, predictability built a life. While you were chasing freedom, I built stability. You mocked it, but now it's what you're looking for." She bit her lip, silent, her pride cracking. The coffee shop hum faded behind us. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding power, I was. "Daniel, I made mistakes," she whispered. "But I still care about you." I nodded, standing up slowly. "Maybe you do. But caring now doesn't fix what you broke then." As I walked out that door, I realized sometimes closure isn't an apology. It's finally not needing one. She called me 3 days later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was quiet this time, no arrogance, no confidence. Just a trembling softness I'd never heard from her before. "Daniel," she said, "I can't stop thinking about you." about everything I ruined. I leaned against my kitchen counter, staring out the window at the city lights. Lena, it's over, I said gently. You need to move on. She hesitated, her breath catching. You don't understand. I have moved on. She stopped herself. You were the only person who ever made me feel safe. I thought I needed freedom, but I just needed you. For a long time I said nothing. Part of me wanted to give in, to let nostalgia trick me into believing in her again. But the silence stretched, and I realized something her voice no longer hurt. It didn't stir anger or longing. It just sounded distant. Lena, I said finally. You didn't love me. You loved what I gave you, the stability, the care, the comfort. You loved how I made you feel about yourself. But you never loved me. She started crying softly. That's not true, I sighed. It is, and that's okay. We were both different people then. There was a long pause before she whispered, I'll always love you. I smiled sadly. You loved the version of me who existed to fix you. That version's gone. The line went silent, just the faint sound of her breathing. Then click. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, feeling a strange mix of peace and grief. For years, she was my entire world. But now, she was just a chapter I'd already finished reading. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to turn the page back. Months passed after that final call, and life found its rhythm again. Work was fulfilling. Weekends were quiet, and for once my peace didn't feel temporary. I'd built something solid: career, stability, confidence. The same things I used to think made me boring were now the foundation of a life I genuinely loved. Every now and then, Lena's name would pop up on my phone, an old text thread, a social media suggestion, a random memory. I never blocked her, but I never reached out either. She was a ghost from a life I no longer recognized. I sometimes wondered if she still wandered from place to place, chasing meaning the way she used to chase approval. One evening, I saw her profile by accident. She was promoting her art again, this time with a caption that read, Healing Through Rediscovery. Her smile looked rehearsed. The likes were few, and I realized something that hit harder than anger ever could. She was still searching for what I had already found. I shut off my phone and stepped onto my balcony. The air was cool, the city alive below. For the first time, I didn't feel small in it. I thought back to the boy who once begged for love, who mistook chaos for passion, who thought being needed was the same as being valued. That version of me had died the day she left. The man standing here now had been rebuilt from the ashes, stronger, quieter, and finally whole. Lena had spent years finding herself, using people like ladders to climb out of her own emptiness. But I'd done something she never could. I'd built the life she claimed she wanted, and I built it alone. And now she's out there searching for the version of me she threw away. While I wake up every day, grateful she did.